Well, 2026 is up and running and it is off to a bang here in Revolution Pro Wrestling. We've just come off air live in London 103. Dave Bradshaw here alongside RevPro owner and booker Andy Quildan. Andy, lots to get into from Porchester Hall.
Yeah, we had a table last time. It was...
Yeah, well, budget cuts. Before we get into any of that, though, there was some other action in the wrestling world today on the other side of the world at the Tokyo Dome where, of course, the ace of New Japan and a former undisputed British heavyweight champion in Hiroshi Tanahashi had his last match. Just wanted to get your thoughts, first of all, on Tanahashi and his legacy.
I think his legacy is he's one of the greatest to ever lace a pair of wrestling boots. And I mean that genuinely. There's very few wrestlers who can make an emotional connection with an audience like Tanahashi can. You see people in the crowd crying when he's wrestling. You see the joy he can bring to people when he's wrestling. Real emotion. And I think that fundamentally, that's what professional wrestling is all about. It's about drawing that emotion out from you. And there's very few people who are able to do that, like Hiroshi Tanahashi. I believe, in my mind anyway, he was responsible for the rejuvenation of New Japan Pro Wrestling. He was responsible for being the person to turn it into the global success it is now, and opening so many people's eyeballs to New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I just remember, all those big matches that he'd have, and the air guitar at the end of those matches, and just the way that would sign off all those big New Japan shows. It was just a very great time to be discovering new professional wrestling, because I guess, when he was at the forefront of things, when he was, arguably the best wrestler in the world, that was when we were first getting real-time access to New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that's the first time the globe was getting real-time access to New Japan Pro Wrestling. So he opened so many people's eyes to this style of pro wrestling, and I think, like, from a perspective of Revolution Pro Wrestling, he's been responsible for so many moments, be it his first night in. I remember when we did a preview, a reveal, a big reveal. Like, we had Jushin Liger at our first York Hall show, and our second York Hall show was headlined by Tanahashi. And I just remember the piece that we put together for that show. And we marketed him as the best wrestler in the world. He'd won the Wrestling Observer Wrestler of the Year. We got sound bites from Dave Meltzer, from Brian Elliott from Fighting Spirit at the time, and probably a few other people. I probably threw one in, but we had some real good quotes about Tanahashi and what he meant to the business then. And we presented him like a superstar, and that's the way we wanted people to take to him. And I would say, when we first announced him, not everyone knew who he was, because, again, New Japan Pro Wrestling was very new to the UK at that time. Obviously, look, we know about its history, we know how long it's been around for, but in terms of being available and easily accessible for the mainstream professional wrestling fan, it was in its infancy. And despite the fact not everyone knew who he was, when it came to York Hall, we were able to build that mystique. And it wasn't hard, because you just research him and you'd watch one of his matches and be blown away. And then just the way he carried himself, like a real superstar. And it's been like that throughout. And, when you get people who are that levels, and he was the first wrestler as well, who I was like, looking and saying, this is a new generation of import wrestler, in terms of, like, when you think about all those big stars, they used to come to the UK when they were washed up and couldn't go anymore, and wanted an easy payday, that was kind of a thought about, anyone who's been a star on a huge stage like Tanahashi. But with Tanahashi, we were getting him in his prime, and he's continued to deliver, and he's continued to deliver value for money every single time he's been in Revolution Pro Wrestling. Of course, you alluded to the fact he made history, becoming a British heavyweight champion at the first Royal Quest at the Copper Box Arena. And he's just been a part of so many great moments, including even in 2024 when he teamed with Zazaya and Leon Slater in that team where he really endorsed them as the future of the business. And look at them now, right? And few people will forget, you know, that dream tag team match he had at Crystal Palace this past October. And like I say, it's been an absolute pleasure to be associated with him and to have him come and view our product. I remember him watching at that Global War show, actually. I remember him being sat backstage and watching Ricky Knight Jr. versus Michael Oku, which you can watch on our on-demand service. Oh, it's actually free on this YouTube channel, actually. So watch that. And then if you like it, subscribe to the on-demand service. But he was watching that match and he was jumping up and down at the, you know, the big moments like we all were, like all the wrestling fans that we are. So it's just great to see that he was still a wrestling fan at heart as well after all these years. So, you know, he can be tired now. He can't be too tired because he needs to lead New Japan into the next generation in a suit, much like you. So maybe you can trade some fashion tips or he can give you some fashion tips. I will add, he's got the best hair in the business as well, just fantastic hair. I've
got to say, by the way, the first time I met Tanahashi was at that Global Wars in 2024. Where there was a crowded locker room. It's not a very big locker room at the Doncaster Dome. I just sat myself down and I noticed someone next to me was using hair straighteners. And then I was like, oh my God, you're Hiroshi Tanahashi.
I will say as well, yeah, there was a near call as well, like at the anniversary show, at the Global War show, where his hair straighteners had actually missed the flight. So they lost the bag with his hair straighteners in. So that nearly caused a disaster, but I think he borrowed someone's in the end.
I will say, by the way, complete gentleman the twice I met him, and just such an aura. Like in the locker room, and of course when he goes out to the ring as well, one of the real greats of his generation.
Yeah, I feel you've just said it in a much shorter way than I was trying to describe. You know, like his presence when he comes out, aura is the real word to describe him,
and that's rare. Not many wrestlers have that.
And to have that yet still be humble, even now, even to this day, to still be humble. So yeah, and he loved meeting the fans. I think he's blown away by how many people around the globe know who he is. And yeah, like I say, it's been absolute pleasure to have him involved. From a wrestling fan perspective as well, he's been responsible for some of the best wrestling matches that I've ever seen. And you know, I put a tweet out this morning at Quildan on X, put an X out this morning with a picture. One of my favorite pictures is Tanahashi and Bret Hart stood side by side. And in that tweet, I said that if you want to know how much I thought of Tanahashi, then look at this picture and understand this is a moment I had to put together. Because Bret Hart was my favorite competitor as a child. And I believe the greatest wrestler of his generation. And then I believe the exact same thing about Tanahashi, about being the greatest wrestler of his generation. And I feel like had the stars aligned properly, we would have been lucky enough to see them compete against each other. Because again, the way they approached wrestling as well, despite being from different cultures and you know, on other sides of the world to one another, the way they approached wrestling was so very, very similar. I was able to create that moment with Tanahashi and Bret Hart in the ring side by side together. I nearly killed the Music Man as well because we did him, Tanahashi play an air guitar to Bret Hart's theme. And the music guy I wanted Tanahashi to, you know, put the air guitar on like he does, you know, hand up. And as he comes down, that's where he play the Bret Hart music. But the music guy got excited, got carried away and just like, play.
Can't blame him getting excited.
Well, I know, but I was just like, what have you done? This is such a big deal. You've ruined it. But like, I'm sorry, Ian, by the way. I was just quite heated at the time. But yeah, like I say, just fantastic. And what a send-off he had today. What a match he had with Okada. And I hope that everyone can see how much he means to the professional wrestling world. And if you haven't seen any Hiroshi Tanahashi matches, I really encourage you to go out the way to check some out.
Now, speaking of retirements, that one, of course, we were expecting. We knew that one was coming for a long time. But I hesitate to use the word retirement with what I'm about to talk about. But Sha Samuels today. Now, we know that Samuels was very frustrated after he lost his rematch against Jay Joshua last week in Southampton. He then challenged Nino Bryan. He wanted the match against Bryan. Nino Bryan picked up a hell of a victory, but by any measurement, that's a hell of a win for Nino Bryan to beat Sha Samuels. Samuels, as we saw, then said something to Brian. I still don't know. I haven't been able to talk to Nino. I don't know what he said, but he left some of his gear in the ring, shook your hand, shook my hand, as if I said, "Thank you for the opportunity," he said to you, and then walked away. That seemed like a goodbye. Have you spoken to him since?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I actually know he's going on holiday, so it might be a couple of weeks before we even hear from him. But maybe he wants to go away and reflect upon what's happened. But it did look like he was looking to unlace the boots. We know it's one of those things we often see in wrestling where, you know, you take the boots off, a fighter takes the boots off, a fighter takes the gloves off, you know. And it looked like Sha Samuels was about to unlace the boots and Nino stopped him from doing that. But then afterwards, like you say, they exchanged some words. We don't know what was said, but like the words he said to us were, "Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you." So we know that Sha Samuels has toyed with the idea of retirement in the past. Specifically last year, we know that he put up that stipulation that if he didn't win the Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship, he would retire. We also know how hard he took that defeat to Jade Joshua last week. And we know that coming out of it, he said, "I only want to have matches now that are for me, that I enjoy, that, you know, and I'd really like to get in the ring with Nino Bryan and test myself against, you know, not just one of a young crop, but one of the men I've mentored, one of the men I've taught at the London School of Wrestling." And obviously it didn't come up the way he wanted. I always say you can't really take... So quite often stuff like this doesn't happen in front of a camera, it happens behind the camera. And I always say you can't take those moments after a defeat, those moments after a match when your emotions are all like, win or lose. Those are moments straight after a match. You have to take everything with a pinch of salt, you know, which is why we try not to announce stuff after, you know, directly after shows. We like to kind of, you know, give it a day, give it 2 days to kind of
unless you're put under
something.
pressure by a great investigative journalist who gets the scoop out.
Well, yeah, but there's no scoop to get to you with a Sha Samuels thing. But
yeah, I mean, it just seems to me, and I think it will seem to everyone who knows Sha Samuels, that he's got so much more to contribute. And I hope, as you were saying there, that it's just going to be one of those things where he was emotional after the match, and that in the cold light of day that he might change it.
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. So one, it's dangerous when the people start talking about retirement because your mind's somewhere else. So that is dangerous. And Sha's already spoken about retirement before. So, you know, look, if he wants to retire, that's up to him. Like, I'm not gonna try and convince him anything. You know, before I was always of a mindset of, you know, when people have still got so much to give, even though I see it, if they don't see it, if they want to walk away, I was always like one of, I will try and convince them to come back. But now I'm of the mindset of, if you want to go, if you've made your mind up and you're happy to move on, then it's time to move on. But as you said, you, like so many other people, feel he's got so much left to give, and he proved that towards the end of last year, didn't he? From well, I'd say the whole of last year, really, because when you think about that number one contenders tournament into the Revolution Rumble, you know, into that march towards the heavyweight championship and the reign as heavyweight champion as well, he showed he's still got so much to give, not just in the ring but out the ring, in terms of you know, feedback to wrestlers, in terms of representing our company with interviews and press, you know, someone that everyone could look up to. So I hope this isn't it for Sha Samuels, for sure.
Now, you talk about emotions at the end of a match, and obviously there were a lot of emotions at the end of our main event tonight, particularly for Michael Oku, who was just beyond frustrated at how he's continuing to have to deal with the spectre of Connor Mills in his career. It seemed as though Michael Oku had become a 3-time undisputed British heavyweight champion. He had the half crowd locked in, his music started playing, everyone thought it was over. Then it turned out that the referee hadn't called for the music, hadn't called for the bell, and in fact Connor Mills had forcefully taken control of the music desk, started the music going as a distraction. Joshua then won the match, retained the title. One of the more contentious endings to a championship match that we've had in some time. What are your thoughts on Joshua, on Oku, on Mills?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there, but look, first of all, the match was a physical war of attrition. It was a great professional wrestling match. It was a great example of what the Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship is all about, what it means to both men quite clearly, and being champion, what it means to them and their legacies. That was there for everyone to see. So I think that was, it was a great match, marred by that finish. And then Conor Mills would love nothing more than to ruin Michael Oku's legacy and ruin his moments. And that's exactly what he did, because Michael Oku had that half crab in, sunk it in deep. It was almost like a figure four variation of that half crab, wasn't it? And he had it sunk in deep. His music played, he releases the hold. Everyone thinks we've got a new Undisputed British Heavyweight Champion. As you say, it was Conor Mills. He was commandeered the sound desk. Jay Joshua was able to capitalize, retain the championship, and Jay Joshua marches on. And I think it's important to say, I think some people might be shocked that Jay Joshua was happy with taking the victory like that, but I just think you look at Jay Joshua's character over the last, since we've met him in Revolution Pro Wrestling, he's got a kill or be killed attitude. That's why him and Conor Mills get on so well with each other. The way Michael Oku bounces back from this, look, I'm more concerned, if anything, Sha seemed to have some clarity at the end of that contest, right? And again, we need to wait and we need to unpack it and see what happens. But when we went off air, Dave, we came off air on RevProOnDemand.com, and we went off air, the cameras kept rolling, and we actually came back on the headsets, because what we were witnessing was, I don't know, it's very difficult to explain.
Michael looked broken.
Yeah. Broken, dejected.
Because, from his point of view, you said that's a rivalry with Mills that's been going on since 2020. He thought he'd put it to bed 2022. Then he certainly thought he'd done it when he beat him again at Uprising. And if you're Michael Oku, you just got to be wondering, is this ever going to be over between him and Mills?
Yeah, and I think if you're Conor Mills, the answer is no, this is never going to be over. And it's insane, isn't it? Just how two men who were best friends, inseparable, can be such bitter enemies right now. And obviously it's not something that happened overnight. It's something that took time to develop and whatever, but it's almost like the success of one has gone to the head of the other, and Conor Mills has lost his head when it comes to Michael Oku. And Michael Oku's done a very good job. I mean, at times in 2022, you'd see Michael Oku get emotional, but I feel like Michael Oku did a very good job going into Uprising of keeping a level head. I think a big part of that was Michael Oku, a lot of his focus was on the recovery from that knee injury. And I think that maybe that gave Conor Mills a lot of frustration, because maybe Conor Mills wanted to get into Michael Oku's head a lot more. Maybe Conor Mills wanted the build, the road to Uprising to be a lot more physical, but it couldn't have been. And Michael Oku very smartly took himself out of a situation when he was injured, and we didn't see him for weeks.
That kind of denied Mills the oxygen that he would have wanted, right?
Right. And I think, unfortunately for Michael Oku, in winning that contest, we thought that put him in, right back up there, in terms of, having the opportunity to course correct, as he liked to call it, and have the opportunity to become Undisputed British Heavyweight Champion again. And yet it was winning that contest that we can say started was a catalyst for the events which unraveled before our eyes tonight. So look, it's not over between Conor Mills and Michael Oku by a long shot, I'm sure of it, but it's, like I say, it's where Jay Joshua fits into this, I don't know. We need to talk to TK Cooper. We need to talk to one called Manders. There's many, many wrestlers who want to put their name in that hat as a contender to that Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship.
We saw another championship match tonight as well, of course, a very personal one between Joe Lando and Danny Black. Lando getting the win, and it seems like CPF are now back on the same page as a team. Speaking of teams as well, I do want to also bring up the Undisputed British Tag Team Champions, the Young Guns, who were in non-title action tonight against Lycos Gym. A rare defeat for the Young Guns against Lycos Gym. who obviously now are going to be making a case for a shot at the tag team titles. Can you tell us, are they going to get one?
Yeah, we're going to put it together. We're going to put it together next week in Sheffield. We're going to go in there with Undisputed British Tag Team Championships on the line. Lycos Gym versus Young Guns. Lycos Gym more than earned their shot at that gold tonight. It was a great match between two excellent teams. Listen, I think you can make the argument that Young Guns are the best in the world right now. But then when you look at the way Lycos Gym turned up tonight, motivated, new year, new them, on the same page. They proved that if they can be on the same page, if they can remain on the same page, they proved that they can more than stand up with any team in the world. And it's interesting because we saw them do it against the Good Brothers until they just couldn't coexist with one another. They weren't playing from the same playbook. And as a result, it didn't work out for them. But right now, with them on the same page, it is working out for them. So I think you can look at them, you can hold them up right up there with the Young Guns as one of the best teams in the world right now. The Young Guns aren't going to take this loss lightly, and there's going to be hell to pay in 7 days' time live in Sheffield. So I'm absolutely excited for that rematch, and I'm also very pleased to see CPF back on the same page. I don't want to see him fight again. It was tough to watch, wasn't it? It was a very jarring match to watch. The two CPF members fighting with each other. Great to see Maverick Mayhew back in RevPro. So it's going to be interesting to see where things go from here. Will Maverick Mayhew and Danny Black team together? We saw them team together a couple of years ago in the Great British Tag League after Joe Lando got injured. So will they become a tag team and Joe Lando focus on his singles? Are they going to still do trios? And is Joe Lando going to try and juggle, that role of cruiserweight champion with his duties with CPF? But, one thing we know for sure is just because you're friends with someone, it doesn't marry you to those people. Do you know what I mean? You can have your own life, separate relationships with other people. So,
and we have seen it's very difficult to do, but we have occasionally seen wrestlers successfully pursue two paths at the same time.
We have, yes, and one of them started the long road of events between Mike Loco and Connor Mills. So it's
maybe not in the long run.
Yeah, you saw Mike Loco's tweet when that match was announced. He quote tweeted it and said, "This is going to end well," and put a picture of him and Mills. And it's one of those things, isn't it? But I hope that's it. Like I said, I don't want to see them fight each other again. They're such nice lads, and hopefully they can continue to coexist. And I'm interested to see where this run of Joe Lando goes from here.
Now, there's a lot more we could talk about from tonight, but the main other thing I want to talk about, given that it's a new year, we had some newcomers to varying degrees on the show tonight. A debut for Melissa Fierce, second match ever in the company for JGU, and a return after 2.5 years away for Harrison Bennett. So all newcomers in a sense. Which of them particularly impressed you?
That's a tough one, because I think everyone was impressive. So Harrison Bennett was impressive against Leighton Buzzard, picked up a win. Controversial thanks to Will Caven. I'm sure this is not the last we've seen of Leighton Buzzard and Will Caven. I'm sure that this win is only going to further Harrison Bennett's momentum. Last time we saw him in RevPro, he was a legitimate contender to that undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship. He wants to get himself back to that point, and a win over Leighton Buzzard is going to help that. He needs to continue to be, he needs to continue winning matches. Continues winning matches, he crafts himself opportunities. He made the most of those minutes. And, speaking about making the most of the minutes, JGU and Melissa Fierce, they weren't successful today, but they were successful in many other respects, because JGU was in an all-out war with Kanji, and Melissa Fierce, she was in control of that match with Alexis Falcon until Alexis Falcon decided to pull the tights, pick up the win by nefarious means. And Alexis Falcon just continuing to make enemies everywhere she goes.
She endeared herself to absolutely no one tonight,
and
I think we can say.
Making enemies of Melissa Fierce, Kanji, and JGU, and being very outspoken whilst doing it, and then coming backstage and moaning to me that the girls don't support her, and that, no one looks out for each other. They all talk about, women helping women and lifting other women up, and there's such a nice message, but no one helps her, etc., etc. I just listened while she ranted at me. And the reality of the situation is, Alexis Falcon just needs to look herself in the mirror. She put a New Year's resolution with she wanted us to come along to the show to see if she was going to have a New Year's resolution and stop being such and I quote, a bitch. And yeah, she's New Year's, same Alexis, I
think we all got our answer to that question.
And look, you saw the way Kanji reacted to those words from Alexis Falcon, and I got to feel that Alexis Falcon may have made a big mistake.
Yeah, she may have overstepped the mark a little bit.
Yeah.
Look, it's one of many stories on what has been a phenomenal way to kick off 2026. And as we said at the top of the show and a couple of times during it, we are very much now on the road to Wembley, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. This August 29th, Saturday, August 29th, live from Wembley Arena, Revolution Pro Wrestling, 14-year anniversary show. It's going to be something very, very special. I'm absolutely sure. I'm super excited because not only is it the opportunity for us to, attempt to do our biggest show ever, but it's also the opportunity for the wrestling world to take notice because everything feels bigger at Wembley. And again, you can look at it and say, oh, well, you've done anniversary shows in the Copper Box. You've had large attendances at the Copper Box. Yes, we have, but everything feels bigger at Wembley.
It's Wembley.
It's Wembley.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think it's ironic that we spent our whole lives trying to move away from Big Daddy and giant haystacks. That's the first question that people ask me about wrestling, even in 2026. Well, I've not had any interviews this year yet, but in 2025 at least, people would still say, oh, I used to watch Big Daddy and giant haystacks on the TV. I'm like, one, you didn't, because you're definitely not old enough to have done that. And two, we are nothing like Big Daddy and giant haystacks, right? And I spent my whole life trying to justify that fact. And now when you think about Wembley Arena and you think about the history of Wembley, you can't help but think about that Big Daddy giant haystacks match, where the famous saying is they drew more people watching that match on TV at Wembley than the FA Cup final. It's obviously not true, is it? It's they drew more viewers than ITV, but the FA Cup final was simulcast on BBC and ITV. So if you were to
ruin it,
combine, well, I'm sorry, I have to say that. But what I will say is that Revolution Pro Wrestling at Wembley Arena, you're going to see a lot more action than you saw in Big Daddy versus Giant Haystacks. And it's going to be, we're doing everything we can to make it special. But I think one of the most important things is it's still very much a Revolution Pro Wrestling show. We're not going to, oversaturate the show with outsiders and stuff that you don't normally see from RevPro. Everyone's worked so hard for this moment. And everyone's continuing to work so hard for this moment. And that's why this year is going to be so, so exciting because everyone knows spots at Wembley are up for grabs. Everyone's going to want to walk into Wembley champion. Everyone's going to want to walk out of Wembley champion. There's so much great wrestling to be done this year. We've got so many exciting things lined up, so many shows week in, week out. Next week, we're in Sheffield. The week after, we're in Coventry. We've got regular shows in, so we're going back to Stevenage. We're going to Wolverhampton.
You said today we've got more dates that are going to be announced for those places.
Yep. More dates in the next week or so. We're going back to Cardiff. So many great things on the way. And yeah, it's like I say, I always say this, but I mean it. I genuinely do. It's an exciting, exciting time right now. And I just hope that people join us on this ride because, it feels special and it feels like we are on the verge of something very, very big. And I hope that everyone can join us on this ride to say, I was there. And I hope that everyone can join us on the ride to help push us to the next level because genuinely, like I say this, day by day, DIY, we're doing this on our own with no funding, no backing, although if anyone wants to fund or back, come my way. But we're doing this on our own and we are achieving the impossible on a day-to-day basis. And if you look at what we achieve on such a shoestring, you would be amazed. And I am so proud of each and every single person that works for us, with us, and supports us because we are all in this together. We're doing it together and we're going to be doing it together all throughout the year, all the way to Wembley on August 29th and beyond, because that's another important thing as well that I just want to make very, very clear. Wembley isn't the finish line. Wembley's just another chapter in this crazy, crazy journey we've been on for 13 going 14 years now.
There is no finish line, right? But the next stop is Sheffield, as you said. That's next Sunday. We hope you guys will join us there either in person or on RevPro on demand. Andy, I'll let you get away. Thank you as always for joining us here on the RevPro YouTube channel. We'll catch you all soon.